Marky Billson here, Tri-City Sports Now. Happy Thanksgiving to one and all. It will be a very happy Thanksgiving for Randy Sanders if the East Tennessee State Buccaneers are able to defeat Jacksonville State, and they're a heavy underdog, but this Saturday night at 7:30 down in Alabama. Actually, one of the things about this game is I actually believe that there are certain programs that I think could move up to FBS, the way that, say, Georgia Southern, Appalachian State, historically Marshall have. ETSU is one of them. I think that it would behoove them to build a new arena. I'm not sure that Freedom Hall would be conducive to a Conference USA or a Sun Belt membership. But I do believe that, I think that ETSU, top 100 market, good facilities, going to have very good basketball, it looks as, and I think that Steve Forbes is going to stick around for a while. I also think Randy Sanders is going to stick around for a while, to be brutally honest with you. And, there's always been this feeling at ETSU that, well, if the coach is good, he'll go somewhere else. And really, that hasn't happened that much. In basketball, in men's basketball, it has happened 3 times. 2 of the coaches went back to their alma maters. Les Robinson and Ed DeChillis. The other one, he was the local guy that went to Auburn. That's Sonny Smith. And frankly, at the time, ETSU had been to the NCAAs more times than Auburn had. Football, it's really only happened once. Gene McMurray back in the day left to go to Ole Miss as an administrator, if you want to get technical about it. But in modern times, they're lost. Or in a case of, say, John Robert Bell, he left ETSU for a position with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, or they dropped the program on Paul Hamilton. But the departure, that generally doesn't happen. And, you can tell me all you want, Coach of the Year. I told you all about what that is. That means that the media and the coaches are trying to save face. We picked ETSU for 8. They won it, or finishing a 3-way tie. Well, we can't have had bad talent evaluation. No. That must be the coach. Doesn't matter if he started the wrong. That was it. Does he not belong in the Hall of Fame? You think he's going to trade his Super Bowls? I mean, he passed away a few years ago, but, you think he'll trade his Super Bowls for Coach of the Year titles? I don't. So, think about that for a second here before we go any further. But no, I did have a chance to talk to Randy Sanders yesterday after football practice, and the Buccaneers are, like I said, 2 days away from attempting to upset the top 10 Jacksonville State. Are they still in the top 10? They were last week. Anyway, Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks, they lost to was Kennesaw State, I believe, in a overtime shootout, 5 overtimes in SunTrust Park. Okay. Without
and that's just the nature of the business.
Winning 8 games after being picked for 8th place. For you personally, what was your biggest surprise this season?
Well, honestly, I was a little surprised that we were picked to be next to last. I thought that was a good thing when it happened. I didn't know if we could win 8 games. You never know going in. I knew we had a lot of guys that fell in favor for us too. You know, we catch Mercer when they're playing with not their starting quarterback. So there's been some good things happen, but it's been a good season. I don't know if there was a biggest surprise. It was just a lot of guys that came out, worked hard, took coaching, got coached hard, and have responded the right way.
Let's look at
And rush, and we got some good defensive linemen. They got to show up. They got to make an appearance and have more of an impact on the game than what we did last week.
What did you learn? You've prepared for many bowl games. Everybody who roots for Tennessee, who also roots for ETSU, was very excited when you were hired because, of course, you were the guy who prepared for the Fiesta.
Normal schedule. You've had that game on the schedule, so everything's broken down whenever you take the field Saturday before. But with this one, it took us another day and a half to get everything done to where we could really start doing a game plan. So to me, that's the biggest thing. You don't have a month to do it. We've had actually 1 day less than normal.
Is that what's different about preparing for this game than a regular season game?
Hopefully we can play well on the road. It's been a challenge for us this year, but we're 3-2 on the road. We would like to finish up 4-3.
Is it that big of a deal? I'm always like, oh, they'll be yelling at the Buccaneers. You got to be able to handle that. Is it really that big to play on the road and then at home?
Personally, I've always loved playing on the road. I've always thought playing on the road was more fun than playing at home. Whenever you go somewhere and they hate you, and they're calling you names and shooting you birds and booing you pre-game, and you win, and you get to watch their fans leave before the game's over, there's not many feelings like that in the world. It's great to win here at home at William Green Stadium, or it was great to win at home in Doak Campbell, or in Kentucky or in Neyland. It's always fun to win at home, and it's great to play at home. It's nice to sleep in your own bed the night before, but there's something about winning on the road, playing on the road, and winning on the road that's really special.
Randy Sanders taking on the role of Vincent Price. He enjoys it. There you have it. That was my talk. Okay, a couple of takeoffs from there. the pass rush, getting to the quarterback. Yeah, I mean, it's simplistic. It's a game of field position. It's a game of blocking and tackling. But the key, I think, is going to be for ETSU to win to get to the quarterback. It's that simple. Okay, I mean, and Jacksonville State allowed 18 sacks this year in 11 games. So they've had pretty good pass protection. It's not invincible. Obviously, it fell behind 18 times, but 18 sacks allowed this year by Jacksonville State. Always looking at sacks allowed. That is a huge stat to look for. And, people talk about, the offensive line. Because of Jared Guarantano holding on to the ball too long. He's been sacked 21 times. Keller Christ once. So anyway, that's always a great stat to look at in football. Sacks allowed. It's very underrated. Not a whole lot. It's tough to find that stat. Now, I mean, you get a stat for everything, but it's not like, rushing yards or something like that. You sometimes have to work to find out ETSU, getting to the passer, that's the big thing. Talked about being picked 8th, and he liked being picked 8th. Coaches love to be picked 8th. They don't like to have the target on them. The only time I can ever remember a coach talk about he liked to be picked first was Davey Johnson managing the 1986 New York Mets, who went on to win the World Series. I'm not saying it's totally irrelevant. It's sleeping in your own bed, etc. But I'm telling you right now, home field advantage really, it can be so overrated. Now, you can give me numbers, and such, but in baseball, when it was less than 32 degrees. I'm always a little surprised about that because it's not like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't have Paul Gruber from Wisconsin blocking for them for all those years, I mean, it's not like they never had players from the North playing for the Bucs. Let's face it, they had Hugh Green, didn't they, playing from Pitt. Yeah, that's not good. Who else? Winston is from Florida State, so, you know. But Ryan Fitzpatrick from Harvard. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent here. Point is, like I said, Sanders downplaying you're on the road. The biggest thing is because it is the Iron Bowl week, finding places to stay for ETSU, finding a place to feed them. That's been the big thing. Oh, they'll find something. They're not going to sleep in tents. But yeah, finding the hotel around there that can put them up. Now, that's stuff that doesn't get a whole lot of press, but it is... find places. That's something they don't tell the players to worry them, but it is something that has to be taken care of. And yeah, it can be a cause of concern, perhaps, for the ball game. But here we go. Playing on the road, no big whoop. And I'm going to tell you that, yeah, ETSU, I mean, even if they win the game, they're going to go to Maine. It's conceivable they could host a third-round playoff game, but is it conceivable that they can beat both Jacksonville State and Maine? Figure one or the other, but then, you know. Number two, that you take from that, the pass rush. Got to take, you know, that's the key to the game. Getting to the passer. So, there you have it. Right? I mentioned how it was going to be played in the travel arrangements in terms of food and lodging, maybe a bit more difficult than another week or at another location. However, certainly, I mean, if it was played around here, might be something to think about. I mean, if the FCS in the future might consider such things as to where they hold a playoff game or not, but that's, yeah, I mean, I'm sure eventually they will find hotels and such for ETSU. Regardless, mentioned before how, you know, right now the Bears and the Lions are playing, and it's still very early on, so any score I give you is just, you know, almost, you know, inconsequential, but it does, you know, Bears and Lions, again, it might not be Bears and Packers, but it is something of a rivalry game. Certainly Cowboys and Redskins are. Certainly Falcons and Saints are. And certainly the Egg Bowl that's being played today between Mississippi State and Mississippi are. It also saddens me. There's one great rivalry that is, you know, kicks off rivalry weekend. But Texas and Texas A&M aren't going to play. Used to all the time on Thanksgiving. That used to be, you know, ESPN. You'd see after the Cowboys, boom, Texas A&M. That was the biggie. And now they don't play anymore because Texas A&M, of course, left to go to the SEC, which I'm not saying they shouldn't have done that. No. What I am saying is that those two teams should play at the end of the year and on Thanksgiving. I'm going to talk about being dated. Any Virginia fans out there? See the Virginia Pitt game? See how Elijah Zeiss basically won the game at the end with this big sack? Remember that? Sometimes I have on my friend Paul Zeiss, who is a big media type, and that's his son. I remember when Elijah was a baby. We were longtime friends. We're very old friends. Paul and I. He used to do stuff for this radio station 20 years ago. Interview Keith Schuler for me in my first stint here. Anyway, I mention that because it's been, 27 Thanksgivings ago, but I can remember we went to the Pitt-Penn State game. That doesn't get played. You know, it's the beginning of rivalry weekend. We've got these great NFL rivalries and the Egg Bowl being played today, and, you know, this is why I say, you know, college football needs a commissioner, or they need Miles Brand to grow a pair or something. I mean, it's just gotten to the point where when you don't have on this day the two aforementioned rivalries, I'd even throw in Tulane and LSU. I know Tulane hasn't been competitive and they're not in a Power 5 conference, but yeah, I mean, sure. Played at the Superdome. Give them that one chance. I know Tulane now plays in a smaller stadium. Give them that one chance to fill out their home venue every other year. Why not? There's certain great rivalries that aren't being touched. Georgia Tech, for instance, Florida State, South Carolina Clemson. They're in different leagues. But if you tried to do away with them, even with the lack of attention that Georgia Tech gets, try to break that one up. Yeah. There'd be riots down Peachtree Street, right? Okay, so. There's a Peachtree Avenue, and that's a main drag in Atlanta, but I can't remember if it's an avenue or a road or whatever. It's Peachtree Street, isn't it? Okay. And that's one of the things that I lament, that I, wish were still around, that sort of thing. Now, also want to say this about rivalry weekend, though. I talked here a little bit about the Bears and the Packers. Now, that's the big rivalry for both those teams. Lions and Bears, I mean, it's there. It's traditional. I'm sure that there were some, pretty decent matchups back when Buddy Parker and George Halas were coaching the teams. Or Barry Sanders going up against Mike Ditka's, teams. Something like that. I mean, it's not like they've never played good games. In fact, one of the great Thanksgiving Day games ever was a Bears victory against the Lions back in 1980, when in overtime, the kickoff returner just returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. Game over. Made Alcoa's fantastic finishes for years and years, But nevertheless, something to consider here. I was thinking of this. It's, the Lions and the Bears. To the Lions, is that their biggest rival? Is it the Packers? I mean, you kind of think it would probably be, but to the Bears, it's the Packers. And that's telling some, that speaks of the identity right there. And how in that NFC North, you've got those great historic teams, the Bears and the Packers, and here are the Lions over here. Wait a minute. We're here. Hold on. Don't forget. Yeah, I know we went 0-16 10 years ago, but, Alex Karras, Paper Lion, we're here. Bobby Lane, I mean, we do have a nice history. Bob Seifers with the big punting day, last game of the 46th season. There's a local time. Still the NFL record, by the way. You want to talk Lions and Bears? 1946, last game of the year, Wrigley Field. Kingsport's Bob Seifers averaged 61.8 yards a punt in a single game. It is the 9th oldest record in the NFL. Single game punting average. Say what you will. That is actually the 9th oldest record. Yes, I looked it up. In the NFL. Bob Seifers, Dobbins Bennett High School, Tennessee Volunteers, 61.8 yards per punt in a game on a snowy Wrigley Field against the Bears. He used to tell me he lost more games in his rookie season playing for the Detroit Lions than he had previously in his entire collegiate and high school career. There you go. But that's how it ended up, punting and for nearly 62 yards an average, punt average. Okay. In that single game. I think he had 4 punts in a game. Anyway, could be wrong on that number. 61.8 is the single game punting average in the NFL. That's the record. Bob Seifers from Kingsport, Detroit Lions against the Bears. So that's why we're mentioning it here. But that doesn't mean that it's Bears-Packers. No. Lombardi's Packers go to the NFL title game 3 straight years. They win at 61 and 62. It's the Bears that are the change-up that win it in 63. They're the ones that stop it. Bears-Packers playing for the Super Bowl in 2010. More modern. Let's talk about that. That's the rivalry, right? All right, think about that for a second here. Are the Tennessee Volunteers the Detroit Lions? Now, I would not, even in their poor state right now, compare it to some of the suffering that the Detroit Lions have gone through over the years. No. But think about their rivals. Florida and Alabama. Alabama, and I know that there are some historians that say, before, the 58 national title, or, there were 40 years in Alabama and Auburn didn't play each other, and Alabama always looked at them as sort of a cow college, Auburn, out there in the plains, and even though they were both SEC for years, didn't play for a long, long time until about the 50. Before that, Tennessee was a rival. Fine. Once upon a time, Auburn was the rival to Tennessee. Not so much anymore, right? I mean, I'm sure that Sewanee in the day was, something for the Tennessee Volunteers. If we want to go back far enough. Not anymore. Georgia Tech. So I was lamenting the loss of some great rivalries, Texas A&M and Texas Pitt Penn State, which used to be played on Thanksgiving. However, I would also point out that while I'm talking Bears and Lions, and the Bears are, our real rivalry is the Packers. You can call us your rivalry if you'd like to, Detroit Lions. That's kind of the shape that the Tennessee Volunteers are in. Have you ever thought about this? Because, Alabama, Auburn, obviously, that's their top rivalry. Probably the best in all of college football. Florida? No, it's Florida State. It's always going to be. I mean, they're interstate rivalries. Come on. Because of that, what about Tennessee Vanderbilt? Obviously, for Vanderbilt, Tennessee is their top rival. Tennessee is trying to say, no, that's great. You're not ours and all this. Because it's tough to really hate a team that historically have always beaten. But let me ask you this. Let me ask you this real fast. What if Vandy did get good? What if they became kind of a Northwestern? Or a Stanford? Got the old defensive coordinator with the Cardinal there. What if that ever happened? Could Tennessee Vanderbilt ever supplant? I mean, they're playing this year for a minor bowl game. Maybe for Tennessee to be great again, they need to have a competitive Vanderbilt, and they need competitive Vanderbilt to become that rivalry there, interstate, so that, number one versus number one, instead of Tennessee, which is, okay, Vanderbilt, we're your top rivalry, but no, ours is Alabama or Florida, and Alabama and Florida don't recognize Tennessee as theirs. Tri-City Sports Now.
To the meeting, run after